Hello, my name is Zachariah Merces-Spindler, and this is my transnational research project on the global enterprise and globalization of Sony and PlayStation, its subsidiary. First, the introduction. Sony was founded in 1946, originally under the name Tokyo Tsushin Kyogo KK, or also known as Tokyo Telecommunications Engineering Corporation, in Tokyo, Japan, co-founded by Masaru Ibuka and Akio Morita. The company had its early beginnings as a technology company producing radio parts, megaphones, and designed the world's first ever magnetic audio recorder, which proved to be a very revolutionary project in future years. Shortly after, up until the 1970s, Sony began expanding, not through its product sales, but rather opening up offices and headquarters and production plants in various countries in the world, such as the United States and in Europe. The co founder, Morita, called it global localization. Instead of selling products worldwide and having to deal with free trade and trade agreements and all that, the company began establishing itself in multiple markets to then be able to produce a product and sell it within that country. So it would be that country's own product. Like how in the 1970s, Morita, with the building of a production plant in San Diego to produce color televisions called the Trinaton, he wanted the company to be American ran. That way, it would be a truly American company under the Sony brand. In later years, Sony began developing, or not exactly developing, but growing its brand by partnering with American companies such as CBS to form, at the time, Sony CBS Music Entertainment, which was later changed and after Sony fully took hold in purchasing of the music, the record industry, or that record company, and renamed it Sony Music Entertainment. In 1988, they purchased Columbia Pictures and renamed it Sony Pictures. So now Sony was no longer making televisions or radios, but as a brand, they were producing music for artists and motion pictures, and even further into television, and then expanding even further into going to advertising and marketing as subsidiary companies of the Sony brand. Eventually, Sony developed through their Sony Music and the Sony Corporation a co-partnership with itself to create Sony Computer Entertainment Inc. in 1994 or 1993. And after that, the first product that Sony Computer Entertainment would develop was their first video game console, the PlayStation, which would release in Japan in December of 1994. With that release in Japan 1994, it was first witnessed with few sales in the millions until it expanded to North America and worldwide in 1995, which it then quickly grew, and by its end run in 2000, it had sold over 70 million units. In the year 2000, Sony developed their second edition of the Sony PlayStation and called it the PlayStation 2. That went on to be the fastest selling video game console and to date has sold over 150 million units. In 2006, a massive revolution came for the Sony company, or the Sony Computer Entertainment Company, with the PlayStation 3, when they introduced Blu-ray discs as data became easier to produce in mass quantities, making the most powerful system yet. And that had a long lifespan of 7 years and outsold any other video game console. Then in 2013, which the PlayStation 1, 2, and 3 were all sold in Japan first. It wasn't until 2013 when they unveiled the PlayStation 4, to which they released first in the United States and didn't release the PlayStation 4 in Japan until February of 2014, being the first moment that Sony had truly given PlayStation to America and was no longer a Japanese brand company, at least for the PlayStation. What made the PlayStation so successful is the way that it's operated in the market. They simply produce video game consoles, but just like the parent company Sony, PlayStation purchases the rights of video game contractors, essentially paying a company to develop a game exclusively for them, and then they publish the game on their platform exclusively, such as the Uncharted franchise and Last of Us made by Naughty Dog, how Konami used to work exclusively with PlayStation to produce the Metal Gear Solid franchise, Santa Monica Studios with God of War and many other titles, to directly compete with the competitors over at Microsoft producing the Xbox. Now, things got a little strange with the development of the PlayStation 3, which all their PlayStations were initially developed in Japan. It wasn't until the halfway life point of the PlayStation 3 where they started moving the productions of their system to China in Taiwan at a place called Foxconn, who develops a majority of the world's electronics, such as iPhones, Samsung phones, televisions, and they ship them out worldwide. This is the sales chart comparing the Sony systems to the Xbox 360, Xbox One, Nintendo Wii's, Nintendo DS, and it's not hard to see the mass amount of sales of the Sony PlayStations in comparison to others. And that's because of their global localization and their constant purchasing of other companies to stay competitive in the marketplace. Now, the question is, has Sony or PlayStation continue to be a Japanese global brand, or are they now an American or just entirely global brand? Because now they have offices. PlayStation alone has offices and smaller companies working in over 43 countries in the world, along with Sony, producing countless video games. And a lot of their first party developers don't even work in Japan. They work in most of Europe, America, the Netherlands, and especially the UK. It was in 2016 of January, PlayStation officially moved its headquarters and its main offices to Santa Monica, California, the image on the right. And with the PlayStation 4 and the PlayStation 3 first, PlayStation introduced something called the PlayStation Network, where consumers, once they bought their systems, no longer had to go into stores and purchase video games or movies or what have you. They could purchase everything digitally and instantaneously online. So what was once originally a video game console that required discs was now an entertainment box that could produce all types of content directly to its consumers, not having to deal with trade laws and production costs and continuous things piling up. A consumer can buy a video game for $59.99 with no tax, paying no tariffs, paying no trade, paying no penalties, and get their video game instant. With that, PlayStation has now introduced something called the PlayStation Vue, which is a television a live streaming television monthly service, just like a Comcast or a DirecTV would do. They would charge you to buy their box and continue a subscription fee. PlayStation, with the PlayStation 4, is now entering into that realm. The one cost that is hard to determine is the advertising cost and the marketing cost that PlayStation goes through every year, making it extremely difficult to pinpoint their sales, especially with their presences at global conferences, especially the Electronic Expo, which will be this year in June, on June 13th in Los Angeles, California, and PAX worldwide, and all the conferences they do in the UK and France and Canada. It's how much money do they put into these advertising campaigns, because they make them massive and global. As for the Sony brand as a whole, throughout the years, their product sales have continued to decrease and decrease and decrease, outside of the PlayStation, which continues to sell at higher and higher margins with every console they release. So therein lies the issues with Sony. They are no longer a singular company. They don't just produce one thing as they used to. As you can see, they've built their brand to encapsulate a lot of different genres and continuing to produce other products like music and movies. They have, however, been at the front of innovation over the past years, developing the first magnetic audio recorder, the very first CD player, the very first Blu-ray disc. They have been at head of technology and its thing until their constant expansion continues to create financial difficulties for the company as a whole, entering into bankruptcy multiple times, despite them developing their own bank and own corporations throughout the entire world. In conclusion, Sony is no longer a purely Japanese or a technology company. They are a globally localized brand. They are fighting against all types of trade issues and things of those sort by establishing themselves in different countries and being able to sell the product directly through those countries and just receiving an return on investment, creating a company that doesn't live in one era under one banner, but instead multiple companies operating independently of each other. Now, what is the future of Sony and especially PlayStation? That is hard to know, because the marketplace is becoming more and more digital. So will there continue to be new PlayStations, or will we turn into the iPhone method of things, where there's an upgraded version every year or two that you might replace your system with if you want to do that, but it'll remain on the same network, especially with the current growing of Internet of Things, where everything is continuously connected online? Will you even need a PlayStation in the future to access the PlayStation Network, or could you simply play and access video games from a computer or a tablet or a phone or just the television itself? And in conclusion, that is my transnational corporation presentation. My name is Zachariah Merces-Spindler. Thank you.